You
Wow.
quit working for a billionaire to get
To be a
into
matchmaker.
matchmaking.
Jeez.
Everyone thought it was that same look that y'all are giving me right now. That like you're crazy. You probably need to be committed to some type of facility. That's the same look everybody gave me. Everybody told me matchmaking was a terrible move, except for Andre and my wife. Those two said it was a good look.
Honestly, though, thank you for coming on, man. I really appreciate that, man. You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying?
Yes.
for sure. I mean, this is I always love talking about entrepreneurship. A lot. I always
Hmm.
get pulled on for the dating stuff,
Yep.
but this is definitely more of what I enjoy talking about. So
This is your bread and butter.
this is for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Awesome, awesome. Well, Paul, welcome to the show, man. Let's get into it.
Yeah, let's do it, man. Well, it's crazy because because of my podcast background, I'm normally the one that says welcome. I'm about to say welcome, Owen. Welcome to you. Welcome to the show.
Yeah.
Alex. Welcome to the
We
show.
we were also on a podcast before, and we're sitting there and we felt the relief of like we don't have to do the leading, the thinking, like the intentive listening. Okay, where can we take that topic and go from this? Podcasting is harder than it looks.
It's mental.
It's mental. It's mental gymnastics, like the whole like hour.
It is. To the point where I physically get tired. I used to schedule back-to-back interviews, but I've reached the point now where I need to have time to just unwind and recharge afterwards because you're absolutely right. It's mental gymnastics for sure.
Yesterday we just did, what was it, 7 interviews back to back?
7 interviews. We did one the night before at 11 p.m. Eastern time.
Yeah, 11 p.m. on Sunday, then 7 on Monday, all for the whole day till about 8. Then today's the last day of our podcast batch. We're going hard, hustle over everything.
Yeah.
Hustle over everything, Paul.
Well, I mean, all right. I'm not even going to go into it. I was about to say why.
Well, then we can focus on the other parts of the business, right? Because now we're good till like March, April, mid-March, mid to late March. We're good. You know what I'm saying? February's taken care of now, so we can focus on other parts of the business, take care of this on our socials, and really like launch the best product now that we have the time to produce and create great content. Otherwise every week we're recording and editing ourselves and putting out ourselves. Right? We don't have a team behind us as yet, so that's
hear
why.
you. Can I do some just big brother pushback? Can I
Please.
do that? Okay.
Absolutely, man.
Because this is the interesting thing is I find this especially with podcasting is that podcasting, as was mentioned, right? Oh, you already said it's incredibly challenging, and the product is actually in the conversation. It's in the ping pong back and forth. And oftentimes what happens with podcasts is you get people who come on and they just kind of regurgitate what they've heard before. They regurgitate what they're saying in other interviews, right? So the key to having the highest quality content is to be able to pull and extract things that guest has never said before in a
Yeah.
way they've never said it before. And what I have found just personally is that when I did the back to back to back, I got to the point where I wasn't as good as my one-offs because I got into a zone where I was mentally fatigued. The beauty is it's two of y'all, right? So you could balance that. But once I got mentally fatigued, I noticed that I wasn't putting the same level of energy into, say, my third or fourth interview as I did my first interview or my last interview. And so I completely changed how I started doing these interviews as a result of that fatigue, and that was just me. So just something that I picked up because, and the last thing I'll say is, I think a lot of people in the podcasting game look at, especially if you're doing a business podcast, you look at who is it? Lee Dumas's one. What is it? Entrepreneur on Fire.
John Lee Dumas, yes.
John
Yep.
Lee Dumas or
Yep.
Pat Flynn. They look at those two and they say, "All right, these are the OGs in the space. Let me do it the way that they did it, and they currently do it." But the issue that I have with that is those guys. What in my humble opinion, they put out stuff that, quite honestly, doesn't light me up. Me personally, it doesn't light me up.
That's a fact.
Yeah, what lights me up is when I hear some folks go in and break the mold. It's like, basically, what you're about to hear, you will never hear again. You know what I mean? I don't show up to their podcast and get that, right? There are other podcasts that I show up to. It's like, what? I will never get this again. There's a special moment, that's about to happen. So, just some stuff that I've seen,
That you've observed.
Yeah.
That's really real, because like the questions on the Johnny Dumas podcast, Entrepreneurs on Fire, a lot of them are the same questions. They're him asking like, all right, so what was the biggest hurdle you had to overcome? What's your revenue model? So I get it. That's a fact. So you're right, and he doesn't really dig into like the thought process as much versus the other podcasts. So
It's kind of like an iceberg, right? It's like a substance. It's like
Substance
level
iceberg.
stuff. You see, okay, yeah, we've seen this iceberg. We see it everywhere. But like, how big is that? The depth of that rock underneath it, right? Like, what exists within that iceberg, right? Like, let's see how deep it is, right? And then there's different layers, there's different levels of density in the water, right? So,
Yes.
I think that's like what podcasting can be like compared to.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
That's
And
a
speaking of
great
podcasts, man, you got to get into yours. You got to get into your story.
Yes, let's get into
You got to
Paul's
get
story.
into the journey that you've been on, man, because you've done a lot in a little amount of time. Firstly, man, we have an icebreaker. We already chatting, but I have an icebreaker because I'm Jamaican. You know what I'm saying? And he's clapping for me. I appreciate it. Yes.
Clap for that, bro.
You know what I'm saying? And I got to ask a serious question.
Yeah.
Oxtail, jerk chicken, or Korigo? What we doing?
That's a very serious question. man.
I'm not even hesitating on that. Oxtail. But I have a short story though on this. Is I saw my grandfather kill a goat that was like our pet goat. So that turned me off to
Wow.
curry goat. Like, I was like, come on now. That's my boy that you
Like-
just killed. I can't eat that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oxtail, what I noticed about oxtail is oxtail would only pop up every now and then in my family. It's a special event, right? And you get so little meat on the oxtail that it's like a reward. You know what I mean? When you get that, it's like, oh my God, I got some meat on this.
Like your slurping is so hard just to get that
Facts.
meat, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yo.
So oxtail was the win, to the point where every single time I land in Jamaica, my first meal is always oxtail. Always.
Always.
I love
Always.
it. Oh,
Have
and
you
you
ever
have a
eaten
preference?
oxtail for breakfast?
Oops.
No,
For
go
breakfast.
ahead,
I just
go
want
ahead.
to ask.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
I'm talking about every time I land in Jamaica, my first meal is oxtail. So normally, shout out to my folks at S Hotel. That whole crew is, they know me, and I will say, all right, get the oxtail ready. I'm ready. Make it happen. So yeah, always, no matter what time of the day it is.
Yeah. For me, I'd say Jamaican food. Okay, so I grew up eating oxtail as well, growing up in Nairobi, then coming to Kenya, and then I was like, wow, people really love oxtail like the same way they love it back home. Then I got introduced to jerk, and that's when like things changed for me, right? Like I really became that was like my introduction to actual Jamaican culture and everything that existed within it. So now, like when I go to a Jamaican joint, that's all I order is just the jerk. And because I already have oxtail at home, right? Like my mom makes it in plenty, so I'm like, just to feel like Jamaican a little bit, just to be with you, Alex, right? Just to eat with you, like to feel like Jamaican, feel a part of the culture. Jerk is my go-to.
Interesting.
That's my wife does the same thing.
Yeah, eh?
Yeah, she's like, it's jerk everything. We just had Jamaican 2 nights ago, and she got jerk. So yeah.
Dope. Yeah, for me, I'm sticking with oxtail because it's expensive. First off, when the reason why it's a delicacy, it's expensive. It takes forever to cook. So yeah, oxtail for sure. But I respect the reason why you chose jerk, Owen, because like I said, that's your taste into Jamaican culture versus sticking with home. So I appreciate that. I didn't know that about you, eh?
That's my entryway, bro. Like, you know, here in Toronto, like all like the black people, majority of them are Jamaican, right? So to fit in, you gotta know like the food, you gotta know the language, the patois, like the culture. So
Yeah.
yeah, man,
Yeah,
That's a
I
fact.
embrace it. I embrace
see,
it.
I gotta say this about Toronto and all like London too, because I live back and forth between DC and London, even parts of DC, New York, Southern Florida. It's interesting when Jamaicans like officially move into an area, Jamaica Queens, where I was born. When we move into an area, we really do dominate the space. And I say this in a non-joking way. I think on a per capita basis, there's been no group of people in the world that's been as influential as Jamaicans. And I don't say that lightly. You know, Jamaica is a very small country. There are many countries that are much bigger, more resources, etc. But there's so many areas that Jamaicans dominate. But the biggest is mindshare. You know, wherever you travel around the world, if you say Jamaica, there's a smile that jumps on somebody's face. That we occupy a brand equity that other countries can't come close to.
That's
Yeah, I also
go ahead, go ahead, Owen.
I was gonna say even here in Toronto, Paul, like the language, the way of speaking, it's very Jamaican infused, right? And it's funny. I was watching City News TV. It's a local news station here, and they were going around like talking about like Toronto slang, and they're actually like there's a professor who did like a study talking about like the different sayings that are derived from like Jamaica, like hey, the man down man, whatever, like you know what I mean, and they didn't really they didn't really focus on Jamaica. They just said this is Toronto culture, this is Toronto slang, but they didn't really do a good job of saying, hey, this is from the Jamaican immigrants who've come here over the past like hundreds of years and taken apart like different neighborhoods like the Rexdales and etc. and made this infusion of what is Toronto culture, because Toronto doesn't have a culture. It's black culture that makes Toronto hip hop and cool, and even Drake, right? Everything he says that makes it cool is it comes from Jamaican culture. So I think they just got to do a better job of paying homage to Jamaica, a lot better than they do right now. But yeah, Jamaica has a huge influence that we don't really give it enough credit that it's due.
That's a fact. All right, so before we move on, because I know we're getting carried away, but
Yeah,
real quick,
yeah.
When I went to Thailand, right, I had a flag with me, and I accidentally just took it out so I wiped my face because, of course, it's hot in Thailand. And as soon as I took it out, I was like, Jamaican! And what stuck out to me was the fact that, like, it's not like we're in Canada and there's a Jamaican culture in the area. You know what I'm saying? This is in, like, net new space. You get me? And it was still super recognized. But of course, the guy was trying to, haggle me to make some sales. But at the same time, the fact that Jamaica is such a, a culture that's recognized, now as soon as I took out the flag, someone's calling me based off me being Jamaican is incredible, man. So now, with your early story, right, being a Jamaican black investment banker, how did you get started in that? How was that experience for you?
Got you. It was all about money. I mean, I'm always going to be blunt with everybody. It was all about money. When I was in high school, I was obsessed with the Forbes 400, not only in the United States, but also seeing what global wealth was. I've always been just mesmerized by wealth. I used to play Dungeons and Dragons, the nerdiest game in the world, right? But I played it in particular because I loved becoming wealthy and collecting gold pieces. That was just my thing. And I realized when I was in college that the investment bankers made the most money. I literally remember looking at the list of, starting salaries. You got engineers making 50K. You got investment bankers, though, are making 75K starting, And so I literally went into that career only because of the money. And I didn't get into a top bank right away because I remember applying to 75 different investment banks. But long story short is once I got into one investment bank, that's all it was for me. And 2 years into it, I hated it. It was the greediest career in the world. And the moment that I knew I had to leave was when my boss, who was only 33 at the time, he his wife was pregnant with her first child. And instead of going to the hospital with his wife, he came into work because we were working on a major offering. It was actually the second largest stock offering at the time. And he came in, and I'll never forget, everyone in the office applauded him. They were happy that he was there. And I couldn't believe that, and I couldn't reconcile that in my mind. This is your first child. Like, this is your child. Like, what? You're leaving your wife behind? Like, this is crazy. And that's when I knew it wasn't the right move for me, you know.
You say the money was the big factor for you, right? So this is coming out of high school, going to college. Coming out of college, you're looking at all these different options. That, okay, what career path can I go into? So being that money driven, what was your background like coming up that made you so like obsessed with making so much money that was your only focus? That you didn't, and this also goes to, did you care about the fulfillment, or was it just, I don't care if I'm happy at all, I just want to get this bread? And what was that reason for like being so like headstrong on making that much money?
Yeah, I mean, we all come from, it sounds like we're all second generation, first generation, right, immigrants, right? I think that's where we can connect, is that I'm sure your parents were about the come up. They were about get a great job, make a lot of money. That's exactly what my parents were. Get a great job, make a lot of money. There was no real talk on be happy in life, be fulfilled in life, right? It was just get a great job, make a lot of money. And truth be told, I watched my father go from I was born, so I'm second generation Jamaican. I was born in New York, grew up in Jamaica, Queens, and then moved to Long Island, and we started moving around. And I watched my father, we were in Jamaica, Queens, Hillside Avenue, like it's nothing, you know what I mean? And I watched him start his own company and become very successful as an entrepreneur, then as a corporate executive. And I watched how we went from this small little apartment to, then we moved out to Long Island to a home. Then we moved to North Virginia to a bigger home. Then we moved to a bigger home. Then I watched him move to California, to this massive spread in Simi Valley where no black people live, right? Where they beat down Rodney King. That's where they beat him down. Yeah. And I saw how he was able to be this provider for other people in my family. Basically, I was saying to myself, I want to do what he's doing, and I see that the method is dinero. You know, the method is money. So quite honestly, when I was in college, coming out into my first career, I honestly only wanted to make money. I mean, that was it. That was it. I only wanted.
Did you have like siblings as well too? Like, probably how many brothers and sisters did you have?
Yeah.
Do you have?
Yeah. So I have one brother who's younger than me, who interesting enough, doesn't care about money. He's an artist, you know. He's like, man, I'm one with the earth, that kind of thing. But when I was in college, that was the only thing I cared, and I cared about symbols, which is bad, you know. I remember I wanted to buy my first Rolex. I remember I wanted to have my first couture suit. I was the first person to get this particular, when BMW moved to the different body style, I was the first person, literally the first person on the East Coast to have it. And I remember I ordered it way in advance, it. You know, it was one of those where that's all I cared about. That was it. In the beginning, that was it.
Damn. And when did you start working for the Billionaire? Was this while you were, you know, I'd say Billionaire because I don't want to mispronounce his name because it's a bit harder to pronounce. Was this while you were in investment banking as well?
No, so this was after. So the real quick track between investment banking and working with, and everyone has a hard time with his name, don't worry, it's Enver Yucel, right?
Enver Yucel.
Enver Yucel is, so I did investment banking, then from there, I quit. Once I was about 2 years in, I raised $100,000, and I started a company, and we ran that company for about 2 years, basically ran it into the ground. We ended up selling the company, but we sold it for literally $1. And we sold it just so that we could get a quote unquote successful exit on the books. So sold that company. That's the company that got me to Northern Virginia. because we moved to Northern Virginia. Then after that company, that was right around 9/11, right? So then I got a job working for Kaplan Test Prep. I was the director for what they call a super center. So I was the youngest and the first black director for a super center. So it was basically like I was running my own $6 million business. Mm-hmm. And I literally took that job so that I could get experience running what I consider to be a small to mid-sized company, which it's not small to mid-sized, it's a small company. But so I can understand what it's like to run a $6 million business, right? We had about 24 people full-time, we had 100 people part-time, and I had to manage all that. It was through working on that job that I met Enver Yucel. And I met Enver Yucel. Enver Yucel immediately offered me a job. He was like, hey, come to Turkey, come work for me. I was like, I don't even know where Turkey is on the map. You know what I mean? So I can't do that. But over the course of a year and a half, I built up a relationship with Enver Yucel so that every time he or people from his staff would come from Turkey or the United States, I would help them. I would set up meetings for them. I would set up dinners for them. I would meet them at their hotel. I would pick them up at the airport. And I wasn't doing it for any reason other than just to build the relationship, right? Mm-hmm. Then I got an idea for my own company, and I pitched it to different people because I was familiar coming from the finance space. I pitched it to, different people. No one would fund it, and then I thought maybe Enver Yucel will. So I flew to Turkey by myself, and I'll never forget it because the day that I landed, there was a bombing in Istanbul, the HSBC bombing. 67 people died.
Wow.
I was in my hotel freaked out. My mother was freaked out. My mother-in-law was freaked out. My wife was freaked out. She was back in DC. And I'll never forget the day that changed my life. Enver Yucel's son and nephews came to my hotel. And I thought they were coming to say, all right, Paul, it's time for you to leave the country. Mm-hmm. They said, why are you so scared? And I said, 67 people just died in a bombing. He said, no, they were like, you should celebrate life. You should celebrate the fact that didn't happen to you and that you're here. Take advantage of this time. He said, that's how we operate. So I BS you not. That night, we all went to the club. We went to a club that night, and it was this crazy club. Paris Hilton was there dancing on a table. They valet parked yachts at this club. It was a club called Reina. And I really liked how these guys moved and operated. And so the next day, I pitched Enver Yucel my business idea. We shook hands on the idea. So we shook hands for him to fund up to $1 million in this project. But I also had to work for him, right? So it was this kind of dual deal. I came back to the United States, quit my job at Kaplan, and then started working for him. So that's how all of that happened.
Quick question, like your mental state from going into this feeling of fear of like, oh my God, 67 people just died, right? Like that is like a very like human feeling, like holy crap, people just lost their lives. And then perhaps, I don't know, maybe 6, 7, 8 hours later, you're in the club popping bottles. Like, how was that mental transition for you? Like when you laid back to sleep, what was your thoughts? Like, wow, I was so scared about people dying, and then right now I'm popping bottles. Like, give us like that mental, like, bridge that gap from point A to point B, and like, what were your feelings after like it all happened?
I mean, it was all surreal. It all didn't feel right. A matter of fact, even when I was in the club, I was still shocked and scared at the same time, but it taught me a very important lesson that that I never, because I went back to business school later, and I didn't even learn this in business school, and that is this whole idea of how different cultures operate, and this whole notion of when in Rome, do as the Romans. I was in a different culture. Not only was it, I'll just say it was a completely different culture than what I had been brought up in. And I had to learn to embrace like literally step out of everything I knew to be right and embrace that culture. And by doing that, they saw that I was different than all these other people that they had dealt with. And that led me down the path to one of the most impactful and successful relationships of my professional career is my relationship with not only Enver Yucel, but his family, who I still talk to this day. Literally, I still talk. If I have a problem, a severe problem, I'll try to talk to Enver or his nephews who came over that night. They're some of my best friends to this day. I vacation with them. Our families have now grown up together. I watched them become billionaires. You know,
They also became billionaires too.
yeah. So at that time, Enver Yucel was not worth $1 billion. You know,
okay.
he was probably. I mean, he was doing well. He was probably worth about 100 million. But the beauty is, I had an opportunity to then start working for him and watch him over the course of about a 6-7 year period become a billionaire, and then watch his nephews who literally, like, I will call it, his nephews were bad. Like, they were bad. You know, like, they would come to the U.S. and they'd be like, Paul, let's go to Vegas. I'm like, what? I'm working. What are you talking about? They're like, no,
Yeah.
let's just hop on a flight and go to Vegas. And they would go to, like, Atlantic City and spend, like, tons of money. Like, these were wild, spoiled, rich dudes because of the uncle.
Yeah.
I watched them go from that to today, some of the most astute businessmen. One of the nephews, one of my besties, he runs the largest construction company for educational companies in the world right now. You know, it's one of these where I'm so proud of what they've done, but the beauty was observing it and watching it, you know, getting those lessons, and then being able to, you know, chop it up with folks and talk about what I've learned.
That's exactly what I was about to ask you. What were some of the things that you learned?
Oh man, it's endless, man.
Yeah.
To the point where even today, when I recollect, I still new things pop up. You know, I wrote this one article that to this day, it's one of the most popular articles on LinkedIn and Huffington Post. It was 20 things I learned working for two billionaires.
Billionaires.
You know, and it was what I learned working for Enver and Oprah Winfrey. And the reason why I categorize those two is because they're completely different. Like, one's a man, one's a woman, one's Muslim, one's Christian, one is, you know, made his money in education, one entertainment. They're completely different. Yet, when I saw them work, they had the same habits. It was real weird. You know, things like they would always have these massive dinners and lunches. You know, and I always would think, wow, that's interesting. Like, Oprah would have like 20 people, like dinner, 20 people. Enver always, if he's flying into the U.S., he'd say, Paul, you know, try to get 12 different people at the table. I'd love to have the mayor of D.C., try to pull in the head of the Wizards, try to pull in
Ted Leonsis.
yeah. Like, he would say, pull in all of these people. And I realized what they were doing is they realized that when we read the news, we go online to CNN or whatever, we're reading what happened in the past. It happened an hour ago or yesterday. You know what I mean? But when you sit down with news makers, you are learning what's about to happen tomorrow. And that completely changed my mind. Keith Ferrazzi wrote the book Never Eat Alone. It's like this whole notion of learning through people. So I learned so many lessons like that have changed my life, and I've started implementing, you know, in my life.
Man, that's
Just
incredible.
being at that table would be insane. Like, you're with the mayor, you're with Ted. I'm sure other like power brokers in the city, and just it's so powerful. Just at the snap of a finger, you can be like, "Hey, I want this person, this person, this person," and you're leaving to go back home with a wealth of knowledge that nobody even knows. It's like weeks and months away, and you can actually use that to your advantage. You can use that, like, perhaps financial markets if you play that. You can for opportunities, like just a bunch of different opportunities that you can act on And that's how the rich stay richer, right?
Oh man, it's all about who you know, man. And the interesting thing is the leverage play is not that complicated. So like I'll try to. I've never told this story, but I'll try to tell it in a way that that will make sense, right? So one of the things that Enver Yucel does very well is, so he has schools all over the world, but he has one particular campus that sits in the Bosphorus in Istanbul, which is one of the most beautiful campuses in the world. It sits on it's beautiful, beautiful, right? Now, how does he use that? He invites professionals from all over the world during the summer to teach summer courses there. He doesn't pay them an extraordinary amount, but what he does is he allows them to teach in one of the most beautiful locations in the world. And when you're teaching at this beautiful location, he brings in these lecturers from all over the world, so you're getting a chance to connect with these lecturers from all over the world, right? So I was in the campus, and let me tell you the type of people who were there. So one time I was there in Istanbul, went to his office. He has a balcony in his office, and he wasn't there yet. So his secretary said, Paul, why don't you wait outside on the balcony? I go outside, and Justice Antonin Scalia, Supreme Court Justice, who's now passed away, but considered to be one of the most powerful justices in the world, is outside drinking some water by himself. Like,
Crazy.
What?
why? Because he lectured. He lectured there in the summer. See, this is the type of leverage moves that he would make. Is he knew by doing that? So now, those folks now have favor, right? There's favor, and let's keep it real. I now owe you. Enver, you've now brought me into this beautiful location. It's not like you're going to get political favor, right? But there's some favor. Maybe what that means, and Enver was so brilliant. He would put like a Antonin Scalia to teach, and then he could go to almost any Fortune 100 executive and say, why don't you come for 1 week and teach a business course? The executive says, who else is teaching? Antonin Scalia is teaching. Oh, wow, Antonin Scalia. So I might as well do this. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, he has 12 of the most elite people in the world teaching. And he's also having dinner with them. He's sharing ideas. He's building relationships. Genius. That's how he became the billionaire he is.
Damn, that's such a smart leverage play. Getting the one domino first, then getting everybody else to follow. Oh yeah, I have this guy. You're not as good as this guy? Genius.
Yeah.
So now, what was the company that he invested in once you finished working and fulfilled your duties with him? What was the company that he invested in for you?
Got you. So that was my nonprofit. It wasn't even a for-profit. It was a nonprofit, which actually is what put me on the road to matchmaking, right? Yeah. So when just the quick story is, when I was at Kaplan Test Prep, we had one of our offices was in downtown DC, but we mostly served white, wealthy kids in DC. And all the time, we would have that, black mama come in and say, we can't afford your services, but could you maybe discount them for my child? Or we would have a teacher come in and say, I teach down in Southeast DC, could you come in to do some test prep for us? Can you send a teacher in, right? Discount. And all the time, Kaplan was like, nah. I would go to my boss. They'd be like, nah. So I came up with an idea. It was actually off of Jay-Z's Blueprint album called Blueprint. And it was basically a nonprofit that would...
Hold on. I just need to check you real quick. Don't you ever be like, Jay's album's called Blueprint. Like, we don't know. Never do. Sorry, please continue the story. Continue the story. But
we listen to Jay-Z here in Canada
over
too,
here.
Paul.
Hey, you know what? You know why I said that? Because I realized, this is the one big thing I realized, is sometimes some of these youngins don't even really know Jay-Z's repertoire. You know what I mean?
Oh, wow.
They don't even know. Like they will say you'll say Jay-Z and you'll say Lil Pump, and they'll be like, yeah, Lil Pump, like that's the move. Like Jay-Z is.
Lil Pump will like blow like circles all over Jay-Z. They'll say some. I've heard those type of takes, Paul. Like I know, and I look at them like, Rod, like really, bro? Do you know Jay-Z's catalog? Do you know this guy's like he's one of the greatest rappers ever?
Man, that's what I'm saying. But see, I see who I'm rocking with. I see because I like Alex was like, don't even say it.
Yeah.
Every opportunity, I just find a way to like drop a Jay-Z bar. I'll just be walking, I'll be like, just like I'll drop like a 1-2 bar. You know, even Alex and I, we test each other. Like, yo,
Word.
who said this?
Yeah. What song was this? I Jack.
What
I
song
Rob.
was
What
this?
song was that? What song was
I
that?
Jack, I Rob, I
Sid.
Sid.
You know what I'm saying?
You know,
All right, so
All
okay,
right. So go back to it now.
that's my
Yeah,
bad.
yeah.
That's my bad. I
It's all
forgot.
good.
I forgot the home I'm in. You know,
It's okay.
of course.
It's all good.
So the whole joint was called Blueprint, and my whole idea was to provide institutional test prep to low income youth in DC, and Enver Yucel funded that. Right, he funded that. He allowed us to start, and we built that into a $1 million plus nonprofit. We had a full budget. A matter of fact, I'm gonna throw this out. Michael Vick.
The Mike Vick.
Went to
Mike
that.
Vick,
That's crazy.
prior to crazy, dogfighting allegations, he was one of the first people to fund one of our projects in Atlanta. So we were running test prep projects from Atlanta all the way up to Pennsylvania, institutional projects. A lot of NFL players, NBA players were funding these. So they would spend like $7K. We would for their summer camp, we would come in and teach like 100 kids SAT prep or math or science or that kind of thing. So that's what Mr. Yucel funded initially.
Amazing. All right. And so when do you transfer from that nonprofit to matchmaking?
Got you. So it was 2008, summer of 2008. We were running a program in Washington, D.C. It was called Level 10 was the organization. And we had 100 kids in our program, and we were doing SAT prep. These were high school kids, mostly black kids. And one of the questions we would ask these kids was, how many parents live in your household? And one after another, they would say, I just live with my mother, or I just live with grandma, or I just live with auntie. And so out of 100 kids, not one of these kids had lived with two parents. And most of them were only living with women, not with any men. And that's really what kicked off this idea to go into matchmaking, and that led me down this whole thing where my wife and I launched this brown sugar party at our house where we were inviting singles over. And long story short, by September of 2008, my wife and I had a concept that was we call it the brown sugar party, but it was this concept of, we thought, questions and environment to be able to connect singles. But we didn't want to do this ourselves. We wanted to sell the idea. So we thought it would be smart to try to sell the idea or license it to a matchmaker. But we didn't think there was really anything, we didn't believe there were such thing as a matchmaker, you know what I mean? Because a lot of people don't realize that there are actual matchmakers. So we researched it. We found out there was a matchmaker conference happening in New York. So I went to the conference, and my goal was just to chop it up with the different matchmakers, try to get someone excited about the idea, and then license the idea to them. But once I got there, I realized, man, I was like, yo, there are 250 matchmakers in this room. Not one is black, not one is a man, not one is under the age of 40. I was like, man, I could bring something unique to this space.
You're like the new Hitch.
Exactly. I was like, man, everyone loves the movie Hitch,
I love it. Yeah, I've seen it like 10 times.
See? Bam. And that was when the light bulb moment. And I left I didn't even leave the conference. At that time, my best friend, who's since passed away, Anthony Smith, Andre Smith, he was an investment banker in New York because the conference was in Jersey. He came over during the lunch break, and we talked about it. And I said, man, I'm about to just leave working for Enver Yucel, and I'm just gonna try this. And he was like, you should do it, you know. And that's how it started. And I quit working for the best job of my life, working for Enver Yucel. I quit, and I started matchmaking.
That's insane. You quit working for a billionaire to get into matchmaking.
Jeez.
Everyone thought it was that same look that y'all are giving me right now. That like you're crazy. You probably need to be committed to some type of facility. You know, that's the same look everybody gave me. Everybody told me matchmaking was a terrible move, except for Andre and my wife. Those two said it was a good look.
That was my follow-up question is, what did the woman say? Because we all don't matter. It's when you go home at night and you're talking to her and she's like, hold on, you going to do what? You know,
it's like, you left a billionaire to be a matchmaker?
Exactly. You know, that's what really matters. If she's okay with it, you know, that's when, you know, you have the real green light.
I mean, she was not only okay with it, she also liquidated her 401k so that we would have startup capital. Yeah. I mean, it was one of those where it was a strong move.
Damn.
Strong move.
Damn. Oh, and you're not reacting. That's good, bro. You know, he just said she liquidated her 401k, bro. You know,
the thing is, okay, I know 401ks, but educate me here, guys. Like, compare that to like here in Toronto. And Alex, you what's a 401k for us? Is that like a TSFA?
Yes.
No, not TSFA. TSFA, right?
No, like a RSP.
Oh, RSP.
Her entire how old is she? Okay, yeah, around, how old is she at the time? This is probably like in her 30s by this time.
Yes. So I'll tell you how much she had. She had about 58,000 that she saved up. That, and by the way, when you withdraw early, you take a penalty. At least here in the States, you take a penalty for that.
Same here.
Even here in Canada.
Wiped out the whole thing. That was startup capital. Yeah. Wow. It's crazy. When I tell that story, so Alex, that look, that's exactly how people look. And they're thinking one of two things. They're thinking, wow, she was like, you know, insightful, blah, 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 blah. Or they're thinking she was just crazy. You know, it's like one of the two. But it
also, like, as a man too, you're like, damn, I want a wife. Like, for example, like us young guys, right? Like, we're like, damn, I want a wife who's gonna back me that hard that she's willing to like risk it all for my dreams and take on the vision like it's her vision too. You know, like that's what I'm seeing. I'm like, damn, Paul, you got a good one there.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those where Owen, like what you just said is real. Like, that's almost a litmus test to know, do you have a soul? Like, do you really have a soldier? Where they're willing to say, everything I've worked for so far, I'm going to put it on you. Think about that. Like but also from my standpoint, I know this, so that's extra motivation to, you know, to be diligent and make this thing work. And also too, keep in mind, it wasn't like it was a gamble, but she also knew my work ethic. She knew what experience I had. She knew, like, by that time I had gone to business school, you know, and come out of it. Like, so she knew the connections. She knew it all. So it was a calculated risk, you know. Still a risk, but it was calculated.
She knew you, and she knew what you were capable of. So she believed in you to the fullest extent, man. That's incredible. I don't know how many guys can say that. There's only one other guy I know who quit his job making 7 figures to go start from zero again. And remember the SEO guy, Owen? You know, maybe I'll link to that below. But, man, that's crazy. That's insane. Shout out to the wife.
Find a wife like that one day, man.
Yeah,
shout out to your missus.
Yo, that's the clip, by the way. That's got to be the social media clip. All right. So now you start this company off, this matchmaking agency off. And how does it go? Because, man, I was watching these videos doing research, and I seen this lady running around like, hey, oh my gosh, you look cute. Are you single? And I'm like, okay, this is what matchmaking is about? Like, break down, like, the day-to-day, you know, intricacies of having a matchmaking company.
It was, I mean, it was horrible at first. Like, when I say horrible, it was, keep in mind, like, there were no black matchmakers full time. I was literally the first full time black matchmaker in the world. Think about that. Like, really think about that. And it's also, at that time, it was a heavily segregated industry. If you were a black woman, it was damn near impossible to get a matchmaker because of all of the myths and just hyperbole surrounding black people. So it was very hard. Also, this is before Tinder, and this is before Bumble. So this is before the prevalence of online dating. So people just assumed, if you said matchmaker, they just assumed hitch, or they assumed date coach, and they also assumed desperation. So it was one of these where it was, you look at it and you say, this is like the worst business to get into. But to me, that spelled opportunity. And getting into what I love about entrepreneurship is, I think entrepreneurship is ultimately, it's creating solutions to problems. And if you can create unique solutions to acute problems, you can create great businesses. And that's how I looked at it. To me, it was a blue ocean. There was no real competition. We can create something unique. We had time. Also, if we could get first mover advantage, right, we could get ahead of everyone. So that was what I loved about it. Now, what gave us the biggest uplift was a complete, utter roll of the dice, gamble luck, right? Now, the quick part of the story is, when I started, I decided, because I wasn't a matchmaker, that I had to acclimate myself to it. So I spent 1 year giving pro bono help. Pro bono. Full-fledged matchmaking pro bono, right?
Wow.
I'm talking about no
With your
fee.
wife's backing.
With your wife's backing?
Oh yeah, pro bono. Yeah, pro bono. We were like, because this is what we realized. We had to truly learn the art and the science of matchmaking. And what I saw what a lot of matchmakers were doing is they were charging super high fees, and they didn't understand the nuances of attraction or how to make a connection. And, so we did 1 year of free. Now, let me tell you how this ended up changing my life. Actually, because I did that is probably one of the reasons why I'm talking to you two today. So I did that for free, and I worked my ass off. Every person who came through the door, I worked diligently for. Okay, so I did that for the first year. The second year, I was like, I need to tell the world I'm a matchmaker. My wife was like, you should do some kind of video series about it. This was, once again, before Instagram, right before. So I did a video series called The Modern Day Matchmaker. You can still go Google it right now on YouTube. It has like no views. Back then it was getting no views. And I literally would say, we would put this video out every week. It would get about 11 or 12 views. And I knew my mother was watching at least 9 times. So it was one of those where nobody was watching this thing. Nobody. Yeah. And we were spending $1,000 per production minute. $1,000 per production minute. Go back and look at it. You'll see. Like, I would have multiple camera shots. Wow. Like, we would have location shots. And I was terrible. The writing was terrible. It was terrible. It was terrible. Now, let me connect the two. I was consistent, though. Every week we would put out a new video. Even though we would only get 12 views, next week, new video. Next week, new video, right? In these videos, I would talk about matchmaking. Now, it turns out that Oprah Winfrey was one of the folks who was watching the series. So think about this. I was getting 12 views. My mother was watching 9 times. So it was basically like 3 or 4 people watching. Literally. One of the people watching was Oprah, who ended up giving me a TV deal, which ended up elevating my business, putting me into the TV space, and changing my life forever.
Just elevated your whole profile, boosted up your stock.
Everything. Validation, everything. Yeah. But now let me connect the two. I later find out, how in the world did Oprah, I always wondered, like, how did Oprah find me on YouTube? Like, there's so many people. How did she find me? I later found out Oprah was on her jet one day.
Yeah.
And she was talking with her producers on her jet. She was like, we're working on a new show. We need a new, fresh voice, somebody in the dating space. And the woman sitting behind Oprah on the private jet says, have you heard of Paul Brunson? And Oprah says, no. She says, let me look him up. So she goes to YouTube. And she says, oh, wow, I like how he looks. I like how he talks. I like what he's saying. Okay, let me keep my eye on him. Now, who was the lady behind her? It turns out the lady behind her was someone who I'd given pro bono service to a year earlier. And I had no idea she worked for Oprah. No clue.
Wow.
There you go.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yo, let's just marinate on this real quick. Yo, this goes to say you never know who's watching, bruv. Honestly. And there's this one clip, Gary Vee, he said 1 is better than 0, right? Meaning that a lot of big people, they turn down opportunities to be on like a podcast or a interview by a very unknown individual who's just like putting out content, and they're trying to get on the CNNs, the CNBCs, the Fox, whatever, Time magazine. But he always says, like, it's all about depth versus width, right? The more you keep putting out, the more content you put out, even if it's like 1 to 8 views, but it only takes 1 view to change your life. You never know who that view could be. A producer at CNN who could be like, wow, I like the way you spoke on that episode. Here's my email. Let's talk and let's get you on the show. People think about, hey, let's go for more when, like, you're sitting on your own acres of diamonds wherever you are. There's that kid who's been hitting you up for a show and you've been turning him down just because you're waiting on CNN. But it only takes, honestly, this is so reassuring to everybody who's a content creator that it only takes one time, like one pair of eyeballs to like just change your whole life. But it's all about consistency, as you said.
I mean, you just said it eloquently. It just takes 1. That's all.
Yeah.
That is all.
Yo. My mind is so blown right now. Holy.
Like, talk about like the world synchronizing to make it happen for you.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. And we were speaking to Mario Armstrong. Have you heard of Mario Armstrong?
Oh yeah, out of the DC area.
Yeah, so we spoke to him and he had a similar story where he wanted to get his show Never Settle. He was closing down shop, production was over. His vision was having multiple cameras, same way that you envisioned it, having a big studio so he can have his show. So he's closing it down, and then out of nowhere, someone from NASDAQ who's been watching his show, just rings him up. Is like, hey, I know your season's over, but we want to take your show to NASDAQ. You have the studio, you'll produce it, you'll have everything. And he didn't even know this, right? He was just thinking about, I want this. And one thing led to another. He attributes it to like the law of attraction. He wasn't even thinking about that, but someone just randomly calls him and is like, hey, NASDAQ will produce it for free. We'll do everything for you. You just keep doing you and we'll back you. And he was on Times Square. Everything he always wanted just got given to him just because he was consistent for years and never gave up on that concept.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I love how you, analytically, like, broke down Mario's story and mine, where it's about, you could pull out the lessons of consistency, right? Mm-hmm. You could pull out the lessons, too, of not only consistent, but consistent in the quality. I never shorted, it's not like I didn't see the fact, I have 12 views and then all of a sudden cut back on the production money or cut back on my time commitment. It was almost irrelevant. No, we're on this mission, right? We're going to keep going. Just going back to the pro bono, one of the things I'm thankful for is that I didn't half-ass with my folks, right? I was committed. Because I think, my God, like, what happens if I never did the pro bono? What happens if I did the pro bono, but I said, I'm just going to do phone calls, right? Like, what happens? That would have never happened. Then where would I have been today? Like, it's one of these where I look back and I'm thankful for the consistency of the quality. That's a major lesson I've carried with me to this day.
even in a book by Napoleon Hill, he wrote like before he wrote Think and Grow Rich, Laws of Success. There's a whole chapter dedicated to going the extra mile, right? Like doing more than what you're paid for, because people are always like cognizant and watching like people who do more than what they're paid for, and those are the people who get ahead. And you like the law of compounding, like as I was broken down before, compound interest is everything. It's in every action. Every action has a reaction, and whatever you do to someone, they feel that, and you're gonna get greatly multiplied back to you just from that one thing.
Truth.
Yeah.
Man, that's incredible, man. All right, so do you do away with that matchmaking business after that? And you were doing it pro bono, so did you actually have a chance as well to actually make money with the matchmaking business?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we ended up doing really well financially, and we sold them. So the quick on that is I got the job on Oprah's at the network, Oprah Winfrey Network, and I actually did 2 shows with Oprah, and it just changed everything because that affiliation made me credible nationwide, and that helped us to grow the business. So that was from 2009, 2010-ish, and then we grew it all the way until 2016. And we had one of the largest, and I say we, my wife and I, she quit her job, right? We had one of the largest matchmaking businesses in the United States. Mm-hmm. And another story that I think you guys will find interesting, and I don't talk about a lot, is we, right around 2015, 2016, that was when Steve Harvey was really hot on the relationship side. He had just did a deal to have his own dating app. He had his TV show. He was like Mr. Dating Everything. Yeah. And I was in discussions with him and his team for them to buy my matchmaking company. And it was interesting because it wasn't until those discussions that I realized the asset value of the matchmaking company. To that point, I always looked at it as a lifestyle business. It had my name on it. It was basically me running around here crazy. We had 12 staff of 12 people, but it was really trading off of my brand. And when we started negotiating, that's where I understood that there was value. And I also felt like we were in a bubble because everything relationship-wise was hot. It was highly valued. And so my wife and I sold our company in 2016. And when we sold, not to Steve Harvey, we sold it to someone else. When we sold the company in 2016, that's when we kind of shifted into more of a full-time entrepreneurial coaching mentorship role. But then we moved to the UK, between the UK and the US, and then got back in the relationship space by hosting TV shows out in the UK. So, but 2016, we had built it up, and then we sold it in 2016.
Incredible. That's incredible, man.
Wow.
All right. I want to tie a bow on this. I want to go on to Oprah. What was the business model? Like, all right, so someone comes in, and I want to get this way, just in case anybody wants to get into the atmosphere of, matchmaking. What's like the business model? How much money can you really make, doing matchmaking, like for an average individual trying to get into it?
Yeah, I mean, matchmaking is highly profitable for a very small number of people in the world, right? So what is the basic model? The basic model is customer comes in, customer wants to be matched. You as the matchmaker identify a certain number of matches, 3, 5, 8, 10. And then you set those people up with dates with those particular people, and then you're paid for that. Now, there's all types of different packages, right? So for the matchmaking space, for example, we would work with people for 6 months. We would offer them between 5 and 8 matches. We would commit to that they were vetted. We would vet for criminal background. We would, vet for a number of things. We would bring in a therapist to work with you, a stylist to work with you, photographer to work with you, right? We were charging our most popular package was about $9,500 US to work with us. But let me tell you, people hear that and they're like, wow, $9,500 US. Wow, the profit margins on that were huge. But let me tell you, I have friends. We were not even considered the highest end. I have friends who charge 20, 50, 100,000. Matter of fact, you guys probably know Patty Stenger, the millionaire matchmaker, right?
I've heard of her.
She's
Yeah,
one of
she
my
has like her
friends.
own
Actually,
show.
I was talking to Patty today. Patty, in her heyday, she was charging between about $35,000-$50,000 for her services, and that's typically on the front end. And then a lot of matchmakers have what are called back end bonuses, which would mean that if you're in a if I match you, and you're in a relationship for a year, or you get married, you then owe me a bonus on top of that. Right?
That's fly. Yo, congratulations on getting married. So, that money. That's a very fly.
Oh my God, yeah.
That's
It's like making
awesome.
all-star. It's like your all-star bonus. You know, like in the league and you make all-star.
Yeah.
You're like, all right, you won the championship. Here's another million.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
But the wild thing is man, people are man, they're like, take it, you know, it's interesting. The type of clients are interesting too, because man, I had a lot of black men who were in their early 30s who were like in high school. They were the nerdy geeky guy, you know, and they got out of high school. In college, no women didn't really talk to them. They started working out really hard. They focused on their career. They started going up in their career, became executive directors, or almost made it to the C-suite, or launched their own businesses. At the same time, they're traveling everywhere. They picked up a second language. Their body looks incredible. They now have a stylist, but they never see themselves as that person. They see themselves as that guy in high school that nobody wanted to talk to. That became my kind of main client. And quite honestly, it wasn't that challenging to find them incredible people. And it got to the point where we had selections, like we had massive selections of people. And so, I mean, I enjoyed it, but at the same time, it was a very stressful business because you're dealing with emotions, you're dealing with, you're dealing with a lot of people needed therapy when they came in the door, you know? And I personally think the bubble kind of popped on matchmaking and dating companies, and it's just now recently that Bumble has filed to go public, that I think you'll begin to see perhaps another bubble form around dating companies. And I've advised tons of companies that have sold. I'm advising a big company right now in the UK, a dating app, and the market is opening back up. You know, it's big time. There's a premium now being paid for these dating companies.
Most definitely. So would you suggest for anybody to get into the matchmaking business in 2021 or 2021 onward, or do you think that you know era has come and gone?
Oh no, man! It's massive. It's massive. It's growing. You know, this is the interesting thing. There are three topics that we will, as human beings, always be engaged in, always be interested in. One, politics. Will always be, no matter where in the world, will always be engaged and interested in politics. Two, sports. Will always be engaged and interested in sports. Even going back to gladiator days, those were sports, right? Three, relationships. Will always be interested and engaged in relationships. I think businesses in any one of those three areas will always have market. There will always be a market demand for those.
Most definitely. Awesome, man. You know, I want to be respectful of your time. I know you're a bit over time, you know. So I want to quickly touch on Oprah. You know, what you mentioned some of the things that you learned with Oprah was, you know, how they take care of people. You know, what other traits when it comes to hard skills did you learn about working with Oprah?
I mean, you have to be extraordinarily talented at one thing. I think that's very important. A lot of people say, "Oh, Oprah's this billionaire. Like, how'd she really get to that?" She was one of the most talented interviewers in the world. Like, you go back to Oprah Winfrey show days when she was on ABC. It was basically Oprah Winfrey, Barbara Walters, and Katie Couric. They were considered to be literally the most talented interviewers. If you talk to people at communication schools around the world, they would always talk about those three. She became so good, they can't ignore you, which is one of my favorite books, written by Cal Newport. So good, they can't ignore you. And he basically talks about that. You want to become so good at a skill that the world can't ignore you. And when you become world class at not just one, but multiple skills, and then you can figure out how to intersect those skills, you will have more autonomy, right? Control of your time, more impact, and more wealth than anything else you could do. And that's exactly what Oprah Winfrey is a testament. And so as a journalist, because one of my jobs is I work for USA Today as a business columnist, I interview billionaires. Like you mentioned Ted Leonsis, I've interviewed Ted Leonsis. Like, I've interviewed all these billionaires. And the common theme is that they have a suite of skills that they're exceptional at. And when I say exceptional, they're top 10% in the world at. And that's the reason why, right? And that's like the bottom line in life, is if you show me anyone who has control over their time, they're making a huge impact, and they're generating lots of income, then I will show you somehow where they have a certain set of skills that they're extraordinary at. Anyone. Like, you could talk about some odd dude like Tekashi 6ix9ine and say, what? No, that dude was top 10% troll in the world. Like, for real. One of the greatest trolls ever to live. You know what I mean?
There's a reason we talk about him.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so every one of these folks, people always say, what kind of skill does Kim Kardashian have? No. Kim Kardashian actually invented integrated entertainment, right? So she was the first, her family, they were the first people to come onto TV and use morning shows to push product, right? They were the first to do that, right? Innovative, right? All of these folks, man, they have that. So I learned that. It's like you got to pick skills and you have to become world class at them.
Most definitely. That's brilliantly said. Now, do you have a movie coming?
Oh man, I wish. I sold a movie. So I sold to Sony. I sold my book, It's Complicated, and my life rights as a matchmaker. I sold it to Sony, but it was like, I don't think it'll ever happen, because, I mean, long story short, that was right before the Sony hack. The executives that were at Sony, because of the hack, they are no longer there. So my life rights and my book rights are sitting at Sony, and they could, if they wanted to, make a movie of it, but I doubt they will.
That's crazy. How do you
options
value that? How do you value your life story? They just come at you with a number like, yo, this is X, and it's just like, back in the investment banking days, is you come up with a valuation. Like, you look at comparables, you look at what people have previously sold life rights for how much, is it an option, how long, you do all that stuff. But I made sure I carved out just it was funny, I was like, I'm just carving out the matchmaking portion, because I have a whole lot of life yet to live, you know what I mean? And I plan to do some more phenomenal things, so I just carved that out. So it was just the life rights. We wrote a full script. Actually, the director from How Stella Got Her Groove Back, we spent 1 year writing the manuscript. A lot of people saw it. I mean, we sent it to Beyonce, we sent it to a lot of folks, but it's really hard to get a movie made, man. Really hard to get a movie made. That's awesome, man. And lastly, man, so tell us about the schools you're building in Jamaica.
Yeah, thank you for that. So going back to Level 10, the nonprofit, I've always been trying to engage with education in particular, and also just because of going back and forth to Jamaica. Every time I go, I'll go tour the schools. And what a lot of people don't realize is that Jamaica has a significant deficit in schools. A matter of fact, the schools in Jamaica, the existing schools, don't have the capacity to man all the kids, to take in all the kids. And if you've ever seen schools in Jamaica, most of them are just atrocious. Like no toilets, the roofs leak. Like it's just, you can't learn in these environments. Like you just can't, especially when you go out to the bush,
to the country.
So, yeah, it's terrible. And this is not just Jamaica, obviously. This is the world. But Jamaica's home, so that's why I focus there. And so I started. Man, this goes back maybe 8-9 years. I would raise up a little money and revitalize the school, rebuild the school, build the school, and we've been doing that ever since. Yeah, maybe 8 years ago. We just finished a school in Davyton. I think it was called Davyton Primary, and we put a new roof on it, toilets, window for the hurricanes to block out rain. So we just constantly do it. I just raise money, throw in some of my own money, and we do these projects. Right now, what we're trying to do is we're preparing for a campaign where we're going to build a fully green, sustainable school in Jamaica. But because of COVID, man, I mean, it's just, COVID has devastated Jamaica to the degree that I'm scared of the future, and so all the schools are shut down, so we can't do what we need to do. Like the kids, they don't need schools anymore. They basically need iPads because that's where the education is. But man, I'm so fearful of the future because of just the economy. But long story short, that is called the Give Love Build Hope project.
Yeah.
How can people get involved?
So right now, it's through my community, BWP Connect. So I have a community called BWP Connect. It's a membership community for globally minded entrepreneurs. We have 500 entrepreneurs in the community representing 40 different countries. And I'm constantly teaching about business there, and I bring in business instructors from all over the world to teach about business. But BWP Connect now owns Give Love Build Hope. So to get involved, you have to become a member of BWP Connect.
Amazing. Yeah, I heard a lot about BWP Connect. So you're teaching people about, so correct me if I'm wrong, you're coaching people, you're bringing in lecturers on a consistent basis. What else are you doing in that space?
Absolutely. So it is basically it's like an MBA in entrepreneurship.
Get out of here.
So it's mainly for a lot of people who, because I mean, most of us didn't have someone at their dinner table to tell them, here's how you build a business. You know what I mean? So this is the equivalent to that. So every week we have lecturers who come in and teach on a variety of topics. So for example, literally this week we have someone coming in teaching about advanced email marketing, right? The next week we have someone coming in teaching on how to price your product appropriately. The next week we have someone coming in talking about how she's a top therapist talking about how to build a toxic-free business, right? So it's basically lectures and workshops on the most pertinent business topics to help you grow your business. My goal is to grow it to become the #1 community in the world for entrepreneurs.
That's absolutely amazing, man.
It's amazing. That's ambitious.
Yeah, man. It'll happen. That's why I told Sony, I was like, hey, just take the matchmaker rights because I got stuff to do. I got a lot of stuff still yet to do.
Yeah, I want to ask. So early on when we started talking, right, you mentioned that your goal was to make a lot of money. It was to accumulate the Benjamins. As you've progressed over the years, how has that changed? How do you view what is success to you? Now that you have a lot of perspective, you've done a lot of things, you're looking ahead. What are your thoughts on that when you reflect on your life and where you sit at right now, and going back to that, like perhaps maybe 21, 22-year-old Paul C Brunson?
Yeah. right, that's a good one. I will say, money has still remained important. So I keep it real. Is that um, I? So I mean, I'll be fully transparent, and I'm not saying this from ego. I'm just saying it is that So right now, literally right now, I make more money than I've ever made in my entire life, and what it has given me, quite honestly, is it's given me options. And those options, I can't put a premium on. I can't. I just can't. Now, I have other priorities in life, and I say it's important for us to know our values. And life, to me, is not about balance. It's about prioritization. So, family, for example, gets not my number one priority. Like, we homeschool our boys, even before the pandemic, we do. Why? Because we live between the U.S. and the U.K., and that gives us the ability to go back and forth between the two with them, right, and teach them. So that's part of it. The other part of it is, creativity, ambition. So that's the reason why I still participate in television shows, and why right, because I like to express myself creatively. That's important. I think ultimately what drives happiness is knowing what your values are, knowing almost what your personal code is, and following that. And the other beauty behind a personal code is it allows you to make better decisions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when I was 22, my goal was I wanted to become a billionaire. It's funny, I've got a billionaire in the making right here, but I honestly don't want to be a billionaire. I truly don't want to be, because I also see the level of risk that is required to get there, and I see the level of sacrifice that's required to get there, and I don't want to get there. If all I made was how much I make right now today, I'd take it. I'd just cruise at this. But at the same time, you also, if you're entrepreneurial minded, you need leverage to create. You must have leverage. Sometimes that leverage is in having a great facility in the Bosphorus. Sometimes that leverage is in who you know. But sometimes that leverage is money. And I think that's what creates options. So I've shifted my belief since 22. But man, I think wealth is incredibly important. And just speaking, as a black person in this world, I think it's incredibly important. I think, I think economic power is what drives political power, and I want to see more of us with more zeros. And I think when we have more zeros, we'll be able to control politics a little bit more.
I can't disagree with that. Without a doubt, man. On that note, I think that wraps up the pod. Is there anything that we did not cover you'd like to speak about?
Man, I mean, we did a lot. We
did a deep dive. No. I mean, I appreciate this. Like, I appreciate the questions. I appreciate your hustle. I appreciate what you guys do. Like, sincerely, I checked. I was like, let me check these guys out. Let me see, what they're doing. And I like the brand. I like the vision. I like what you're doing. I stand by it. I mean, which is why why I'm here. And so, man, I'm down to support in anything that you all are doing that you think I could assist with. Always count on me. Man,
you said that on air, man. I appreciate that. That's big.
Yes,
that's big,
that's
man.
Big, man.
I appreciate that. Where can people find you?
Man, Paul C Brunson. I'm easy. Paul C Brunson. On all the platforms. And actually, I'll close on this. Is that I've been moving away from social. I think a lot of us are disproportionately using social, and it's been really interesting. I've been interviewing a lot of entrepreneurs who have cut off digital ads, and they're making more because they've cut them off. People who they've Instagram has been sucking their time, and so they moved off. A lot of entrepreneurs who don't even have a social footprint, and they're out here just crushing it. And so I say at Paul C Brunson, but then I almost say the easiest way is my email, which is paul@paulcbrunson.com, because I'm slowly distancing myself from social.
That's real. Awesome, man. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, the hustle is what you can't control, so control your grind and control your life. I'm Alex.
And I'm Owen.
And I must be Paul Brunson.
Exactly.
And that's Hustle Over Everything, y'all. Peace.
Peace out, guys.